In this video, we're going over our 200 years comp, how to play it properly and how to get that first place. This comp revolves around Aphelios, but uses a wider array of traits rather than the vertical Nightbringer. That said, Nightbringers can make for a fantastic mid-game. Later on, you'll simply replace them with stronger units. This is a default leveling comp, meaning it doesn't rely on any 3-star units, and you'll level up at a regular pace. At level 8, you want to run Aphelios, Akshan, Gwen, Volibear, Fiddlesticks, Ivern, Rel, and Sejuani. Being a 4-cost carry comp, we don't require too much to cap out. 2-starring every unit with solid items is a good start. We run Akshan as a potential secondary carry, and you can feed him with late game items. Think of this comp as having higher consistency but a lower cap, at least until we get a patch where Aphelios receives more Dog's blessings. Before finding your late game units, you can simply use lower cost units to fulfill the same role. Ashe replaces Akshan, Lux replaces Gwen, and before finding your Revenants, you can run Nightbringers like Lee Sin, Yasuo, Diana, and Vladimir, or you can run more Rangers like Varus and Vayne. Our spatula options are relatively limited, but you can still use a few of them for a small advantage. The main one being Cavalier Emblem, best put on Volibear. Since we already run 2 Cavaliers, this makes them all a bit tankier. Most of the useful emblems for this comp will come from the Tome of Emblems to provide things like Mystic, Ironclad, Ranger, or Revenant. Moving on to our Radiant items, Aphelios is a very flexible attack damage carry in that he can use a lot of them. We'll go over a few that stand out. Radiant Ginsu's Rageblade is fantastic. The Ranger trait helps him stack it even faster, and it essentially gives you the power of 4 Ranger while only running 2. Radiant Bloodthirster is a solid item on Aphelios. When combined with scaling attack speed, his autos will keep him alive, and every ult should heal him back to full. Radiant Bloodthirster also provides some extra attack damage, which is great for Aphelios' ability and overall damage. Radiant Spear of Shojin works with Aphelios' high attack speed and huge mana pool, essentially making him an AD caster. Letting him ult more often means he can spread out his damage instead of being confined to a single target. Radiant Deathblade has the most synergy with Aphelios' ability. It has enormous AD scaling, and since it hits multiple targets, stacking the Deathblade is easy. No other item offers as much raw damage. Other than these standout items, we have the usual attack damage items like Radiant Giant Slayer, Radiant Infinity Edge, and Radiant Last Whisper. Note that Last Whisper is less important once you have Akshan, as he already shreds armor with his attacks. Getting to general items, our main carry Aphelios generally wants the same items as his Radiant choices. Deathblade, Bloodthirster, and Spear of Shojin are the go-to core items. If you can't build Spear of Shojin, Ginsu's Rageblade will also work as a strong replacement. For the most part, Akshan will want to use the same items as Aphelios. Attack speed scaling, generally strong damage items, lifesteal, Spear of Shojin, etc. Since you likely used all those on Aphelios, Akshan will be itemized with whatever you find from late PvE and carousels. Things like Bloodthirster and Deathblade are great choices. Aside from carry items, this comp can use a variety of defensive and utility options. Some standouts include Morellonomicon for Volibear and Fiddle, and Blue Buff or Hextech Gunblade for Gwen. Being able to make your utility units into threats or even off carries is one of the ways this comp can turn a top 4 into a first. Now let's break down our strategy stage by stage. With almost all default comps, you can start the game with just about any units and look to either win streak or lose streak. Ideally, you'll start with Rangers to easily transition, but you can use just about anything with a balanced front and back line. Level up to 6 at 3-2 and build the strongest board you can with the units you find. Continue making your team stronger while picking up core units you find along the way. Level up to 7 at 4-1. If you need to stabilize, you should roll down a bit in order to find and build a strong team. If you're healthy or strong enough to hold off, wait until level 8 to roll down. Level up to 8 at 5-1 and roll down to complete your team. The positioning here is pretty simple. Front line in front and back line in back. Make sure to position Gwen close to Aphelios so that he's within her shroud to take less damage. Putting the Cavaliers close to Gwen doesn't matter since they'll charge towards the enemy anyway. We also don't need Volibear close as he'll want to take damage to cast quickly. If you're facing Vel'Koz, Thresh, Zyra, etc., you can use Fiddlesticks or Ivern as bait in the opposite corner. Lastly, if you're facing assassins, you can group up in the corner to try not to let any assassin reach Aphelios. Here's an easy example of an early game board that uses Rangers and a Cavalier frontline. You can also use things like Redeemed or Knights in your frontline. That'll give you everything you need to know to win with our 200 years comp. Remember, you can follow along with this guide in-game with our TFT overlay, so make sure you download that and bring it with you into your next game. In this video, we're going over our 200